Chapter 7. The car wound its way through the rolling hills of the British countryside, past ancient stone walls and fields dotted with grazing sheep. Morgan stared out the window, her mind a swirl of thoughts. Emma and Julia were the perfect companions for this trip. But beneath her calm exterior, there was an electric anticipation. This was more than just a weekend with the girls. This was an opportunity. The private members' club, the Haven Society, was tucked away in a secluded estate, grand Georgian manor with ivy-clad walls and manicured gardens that stretched as far as the eye could see. The air was fresh, tinged with the scent of pine and wet earth, a far cry from the city's metallic bite. Morgan could already feel the tension beginning to melt away, even as she mentally prepared herself for the weekend. As the car pulled up to the front entrance, Morgan took a deep breath, smoothing down her white cashmere sweater and the slim-fitting, navy slacks that highlighted her legs. She adjusted her sunglasses, a classic pair of oversized tortoiseshell frames, and stepped out of the car. The gravel crunched under her heels as she joined Emma and Julia, who were already chatting animatedly with the staff, arranging for their bags to be taken to their rooms. "This place is divine," Julia remarked, her eyes scanning the building's facade with approval. "The perfect escape." Morgan nodded, smiling as she surveyed the grounds. It really was beautiful, serene, with an understated luxury that spoke to old money. Everything about it whispered exclusivity, from the antique furniture in the lobby to the hand-painted china in the tea room. But as they walked through the doors, her heart gave a tiny leap. There, standing by the fireplace with a glass of champagne in hand, was Daphne. She took her time unpacking, placing her carefully chosen outfits in the wardrobe, each piece selected to convey a sense of effortless sophistication. As she dressed for dinner, slipping into a cream-coloured silk blouse and tailored black trousers, she repeated her affirmations in her mind. "I am Morgan Smith. I am confident. I belong here." When she joined the others downstairs, the atmosphere was relaxed, the dining room lit by soft candlelight. They laughed and chatted over a meal of roasted lamb and seasonal vegetables, with wine flowing freely. Morgan kept the conversation light, sharing anecdotes about her work and travels, careful not to come off as too self-important. She listened as Daphne recounted stories of her latest adventures, subtly steering the conversation to include herself without seeming overly eager. As the evening wore on, the wine made everyone a bit more candid. They moved to the lounge, where a fire crackled in the hearth, and the conversation drifted from fashion to relationships to life's little absurdities. Morgan could feel herself becoming more at ease, her laughter genuine as she traded quips with Julia and Emma. At one point, Daphne leaned in, her voice conspiratorial. "I have to say, Morgan, I admire your work. It's not easy to make it in this industry, especially with all the noise out there." Morgan smiled, feeling a flush of pride. "Thank you, Daphne." "That means a lot coming from you." Daphne waved a hand, dismissing the compliment. "Oh, please. We're all just trying to do our best, aren't we? But seriously, if you ever need any connections or advice, don't hesitate to reach out. We girls have to stick together." Morgan's heart soared at the offer, but she kept her tone casual. "That's so kind of you. I might just take you up on that." As the night wore on and the group began to retire to their rooms, Morgan couldn't help but feel that this weekend was the beginning of something important. She was getting closer, closer to the people who mattered, closer to the life she'd always dreamed of. But she knew she had to play the long game. This wasn't just about making friends. It was about carving out her place in a world that had always seemed just out of reach. Lying in bed that night, Morgan felt a sense of contentment she hadn't felt in a long time. Things were finally falling into place. She closed her eyes, her thoughts drifting to the future, to the possibilities that lay ahead. One day, she thought she wouldn't just be on the periphery of this world. She would be at the center, where she belonged. And when that day came, she would be ready. The early morning sun cast a soft golden glow over the garden, the light filtering through the trees and dappling the manicured lawn. It was peaceful at this hour, the world still waking up, and Morgan took a deep breath, savouring the crisp air as she moved into her next yoga pose. She had chosen the perfect spot, near a stone fountain that trickled soothingly, surrounded by blooming flowers that added a touch of colour to the otherwise muted palette of the countryside. Morgan wasn't new to yoga. She practiced it twice a week back in Boston. But here, in this idyllic setting, it was the perfect way to project the image she wanted, calm, composed, in control. She'd woken up early, slipping out of the house quietly, not wanting to disturb the others. This wasn't about getting a workout, it was about sending a message. Her strategy for this trip was meticulously crafted. She wasn't just another Hollywood starlet, she was something more. Something that could blend seamlessly into the world of old money and aristocracy. And while she'd built a career on being seen, this weekend was about being just present enough to be noticed, but not so present that she seemed desperate for attention. She'd left her phone in her room, deciding that this trip would be about disconnecting, about staying in the moment. It was a calculated move. Everyone else would be snapping photos, sharing their countryside retreat with the world, while Morgan would remain above it all, too content in her surroundings to care about social media. She'd read enough about royal etiquette to know that nobles weren't ones to plaster their lives online. They valued privacy, discretion, and that's exactly what she intended to show. As she transitioned into another pose, she heard the sound of footsteps behind her. She didn't turn around immediately, letting the moment linger before glancing over her shoulder with a serene smile. Daphne and the others had emerged from the house, looking slightly bleary-eyed as they made their way toward her. "Morgan, you're up early," Julia called out, her voice carrying a mix of surprise and admiration. Morgan straightened up from her pose, smoothing down her yoga leggings and pulling her loose, white tank top back into place. She'd chosen the outfit carefully. Nothing too flashy, just simple, elegant, and understated, with the hint of luxury in the subtle designer logos. "I couldn't resist," Morgan replied, her tone light and relaxed. "It's just so peaceful out here. I thought I'd start the day with a bit of yoga to clear my mind." Emma yawned, stretching her arms above her head. "I wish I had your discipline. I can barely get out of bed in time for breakfast, let alone yoga." Morgan laughed softly, rolling up her mat as the women approached. "It's all about finding that inner peace, you know? I've been trying to be more mindful, stay in the moment. We spend so much time rushing around, worrying about everything, that we forget to just be." Daphne nodded approvingly, glancing around at the serene landscape. "You're absolutely right. It's so easy to get caught up in everything, especially with the constant barrage of social media. It's nice to just disconnect." Morgan smiled inwardly, pleased that her plan was working. "Exactly. That's why I left my phone inside. I just want to enjoy this place without any distractions. It's rare to have this kind of opportunity." Emma raised an eyebrow, smirking playfully. "Look at you, Morgan, going all zen on us. Who would have thought?" Morgan grinned, shrugging off the comment with a casual air. "Hey, even us Hollywood types need a break sometimes. It's not all glitz and glamour." But in truth, Morgan was anything but detached from the allure of fame. Every decision she made, every move she executed, was part of a larger plan. Being here, among these women, was as much a step toward her ultimate goal as anything else she'd done. She was biding her time, letting them see her as one of them, someone who could effortlessly blend into their world while maintaining that hint of stardom that made her intriguing. The rest of the morning was spent leisurely, with the women lounging around the breakfast table, sipping on coffee and nibbling on fresh pastries. Morgan kept the conversation flowing, sharing just enough about her life in Hollywood to keep them interested, but never dominating the conversation. She was careful to let Daphne and the others take the lead, subtly positioning herself as the listener, the one who was learning from them. As the day progressed, Morgan continued to play her role perfectly. She joined in on the activities, horseback riding, an afternoon tea, and a stroll through the estate's art gallery, always maintaining that air of relaxed confidence. She was careful not to bring up anything too personal or overly ambitious, instead focusing on the present moment, on enjoying the simple pleasures of the countryside. Daphne seemed to warm to her, including her more and more in the conversations, even suggesting that Morgan should join her at an upcoming charity gala in London. Morgan's heart leapt at the invitation, but she kept her reaction subdued, smiling and expressing her gratitude without seeming too eager. As the night drew to a close, Morgan returned to her room, feeling a sense of satisfaction. The day had gone exactly as she'd hoped. She was no longer just the actress from Ties, or the blogger with a growing following. She was becoming part of this world, slowly but surely. And as she lay in bed, her mind buzzed with possibilities. The weekend wasn't over yet, and there was still so much more to do. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of quiet triumph. She was on the right path, and soon enough, she would be exactly where she wanted to be, at the centre of it all, with Count Sebastian and his circle firmly within her grasp. The morning light filtered through the windows of the private members' club, casting a soft glow on the elegantly appointed rooms. Morgan, Julia, and Emma had enjoyed a leisurely breakfast, but Daphne had other plans in mind for the day. Over coffee and croissants, she casually mentioned a shopping trip to London, her tone light but her intent clear. "You know," Daphne said with a smile, "I thought it might be fun for us to spend a day in London. There's a private showing at one of my favourite boutiques. We could all use a little retail therapy, don't you think?" Morgan's heart raced at the suggestion. It was the perfect opportunity to immerse herself further into Daphne's world and potentially cross paths with influential figures. She tried to mask her excitement with a calm demeanour, nodding along with the others. "Sounds wonderful," Morgan replied with a warm smile. "I'd love to join." Daphne wasted no time. Within minutes, she was on the phone with her private assistant, arranging the details. The conversation was brief but efficient, and soon enough, a chauffeured car was scheduled to pick them up. Morgan could barely contain her enthusiasm as she prepared for the outing. As the car arrived, its sleek exterior reflecting the morning sunlight, Morgan and the others stepped into the luxury vehicle. The ride to London was filled with anticipation, the rolling countryside giving way to the bustling cityscape. Morgan looked out of the window, her mind racing with memories of her last visit to London, a summer trip with her childhood best friend Nicole and Nicole's family. That visit had been a cherished memory, but this time felt like a whole new adventure. The car navigated through the city streets, eventually pulling up to a grand luxury retailer. The store's opulent facade was a testament to high fashion, and Morgan's breath caught in her throat as she took in the sight. The car stopped at a discreet entrance, away from the public eye, and the door was opened by a uniformed doorman. They were greeted warmly by a staff member who guided them through a private entrance. Morgan felt a flutter of excitement as she stepped inside, her senses immediately overwhelmed by the sight of the pristine showroom. The space was elegantly designed, with soft lighting and luxurious displays showcasing the latest in high fashion. The staff, impeccably dressed in crisp uniforms, moved with practiced grace, curtsying slightly as they welcomed Lady Daphne and her guests. Bottles of champagne chilled on ice, and an array of delicate pastries was displayed on a polished table. The ambience was both exclusive and inviting, a stark contrast to the bustling public areas of the store. Morgan's awe was palpable. She glanced around, taking in the meticulous attention to detail, from the polished floors to the soft instrumental music that played in the background. She was momentarily lost in the splendor of it all, feeling a mixture of excitement and disbelief at the luxury surrounding her. As they began their shopping spree, the staff was attentive, guiding them through racks of exquisite clothing and offering personal recommendations. The experience was seamless, every need catered to with a level of professionalism and care that spoke to the store's elite clientele. Morgan couldn't help but marvel at the process, her fingers brushing against the sumptuous fabrics as she selected a few pieces that caught her eye. Daphne and the others were equally engaged, discussing the latest trends and sharing their thoughts on various outfits. The day was a whirlwind of fashion and fun, with Morgan feeling increasingly at ease among her new friends. She was careful to blend in, engaging in light conversation and sharing her genuine appreciation for the pieces they were trying on. As the afternoon wore on, Morgan found herself more and more comfortable in the environment, her earlier nerves melting away in the glow of the luxury experience. The shopping spree was everything she had hoped for and more, a perfect blend of opulence and camaraderie. By the time they left the boutique, Morgan felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had managed to maintain her composure while enjoying the splendor of the day. The drive back to the countryside was filled with laughter and light conversation, the bond between the women growing stronger with each passing moment. Morgan's mind was already racing with thoughts of her next steps. The day in London had been a success, a significant step toward integrating herself into Daphne's world. She was one step closer to achieving her goals, and she was determined to make the most of every opportunity that came her way. The morning's retail indulgence was followed by an equally lavish experience. Daphne, ever the gracious host, had arranged a lunch at one of London's Michelin-starred restaurants, a culinary gem renowned for its exquisite offerings. As they arrived, Morgan marvelled at the elegant simplicity of the restaurant's exterior, its understated design hinting at the luxurious experience inside. Inside, they were led to a private dining room, its ambience a perfect blend of sophistication and comfort. The table was set with the finest china and crystal, each detail meticulously curated to enhance the dining experience. As they settled into their seats, Morgan felt a sense of anticipation and pleasure at being part of such an exclusive outing. The meal began with an array of beautifully presented dishes, each more delightful than the last. The conversation among the group was lively and engaging, with Julia, Emma, and Daphne discussing everything from the latest fashion trends to travel experiences. Morgan listened with interest, contributing to the conversation with her own insights and observations. As they enjoyed their main course, Daphne, who had been intently listening to Morgan's stories and reflections, turned to her with a curious smile. "Morgan, I've been meaning to ask, are you seeing anyone at the moment?" Morgan, caught slightly off guard by the personal question, responded with a composed smile. "Actually, I'm single right now," she said, keeping her tone light and casual. "I've been focusing a lot on my career and various projects." Daphne's eyes widened with interest. "Really? That's fascinating. I imagine it must be quite a juggling act, balancing such a high-profile career with personal life." Morgan nodded, her smile unwavering. "It definitely can be. But I'm embracing this period of my life and enjoying the opportunities that come my way." Julia, seated beside Morgan, felt a pang of discomfort. She knew Morgan and Rick lived together, but she chose to remain silent. She didn't want to stir up any awkwardness or confrontational situations. Instead, she continued to participate in the conversation, offering supportive comments and maintaining a positive demeanour. As the meal drew to a close, Daphne and the girls chatted about their plans for the rest of the day. Morgan felt a sense of satisfaction, having navigated the lunch with grace and poise. The conversation about her relationship status had been handled with finesse, and she was pleased with how the day had unfolded. Later that evening, back at the private estate, the group relaxed in the cosy lounge, savouring the tranquility of the countryside. Julia, sensing an opportunity to have a more private conversation, approached Morgan with a thoughtful expression. "Morgan, can we talk for a moment?" Julia asked gently. When Morgan agreed, they found a quiet corner where they could speak privately. "I just wanted to follow up on what you said earlier about being single," Julia began, her tone careful. "You mentioned that you're focusing on your career, but I know you and Rick live together. Is everything okay?" Morgan sighed, looking out over the estate's expansive grounds. "I appreciate your concern, Julia. It's just that I need to keep my personal life separate from my public persona. It's important for me to manage how I'm perceived in the media and maintain a certain image." Julia nodded, understanding. "So, everything's fine between you two?" Morgan turned to Julia, her expression hardening slightly. "Honestly, Rick and I don't have a real future together. He's a nice guy, but nice isn't enough. You should know that. After all, you married the son of a senator. You understand how power unlocks doors." Julia's eyes widened at Morgan's remark, her expression shifting from concern to irritation. "That's a bit harsh, don't you think? Rick is a genuinely good person. Sometimes it's not just about power or status." Morgan's gaze was unwavering. "It's not about being harsh, it's about being realistic. I need more than nice to achieve my goals and secure my future. I'm aiming higher, and that requires more than just kindness." Julia took a deep breath, struggling to keep her tone even. "I get that you have big dreams, Morgan, but there are more ways to achieve them than just aligning yourself with powerful people." Morgan's eyes softened slightly, though her resolve remained firm. "I know you're trying to help, Julia, but I have my own path to navigate, and it's one that's about more than just personal relationships. It's about building a future that reflects my ambitions." Julia looked at Morgan, her frustration giving way to resigned acceptance. "Well, if you ever need someone to talk to or advice, you know I'm here." The next morning, Morgan woke up to the soft light filtering through the curtains of her elegantly appointed room at the Haven Society's British countryside estate. The serenity of the surroundings was a stark contrast to the fast-paced life she was used to, but she had quickly grown to appreciate the luxurious calm. It was a welcome respite, a chance to recharge before diving back into her demanding schedule. As she stretched out in bed, Morgan reached for her phone on the nightstand, ready to start her day by checking her notifications. She scrolled through the usual mix of emails, news alerts, and messages, but it was when she opened Instagram that she felt her pulse quicken. Emma had posted a photo of them together, standing outside the Haven Society. The caption was simple but powerful. "An amazing girls' trip with Morgan Smith official. There's nothing like spending time with incredible women in incredible places. Hashtag cheers, darling. Hashtag girl power." Morgan's heart skipped a beat. Emma was a well-known fashion designer with an enormous following. A shout-out from her was the kind of endorsement that could catapult anyone into the stratosphere of social media fame. And the photo itself was perfect. Both of them looked effortlessly chic, the grand facade of the Haven Society behind them adding an air of sophistication. And she posted it without Morgan asking. Recently, other than the Vogue Awards, Emma's brand had been worn by several more A-list celebrities, so this would only raise her profile more. As Morgan refreshed her screen, she watched the likes and comments start pouring in, the numbers climbing by the second. Within minutes, she had gained hundreds of new followers, and the comments section was filled with admiration. "You two are goals. Love this." So much power in one photo. The definition of luxury and elegance. Following both of you now. #inspiration. Morgan couldn't suppress the smile spreading across her face. This was exactly what she had hoped for, what she had planned so meticulously. The trip with Emma, Daphne, and Julia had been about more than just a getaway. It was a calculated move to solidify her place among the elite, to be seen with the right people in the right places. She quickly shared the post to her own Instagram stories, adding a caption, "Amazing times with amazing women. Feeling empowered and grateful. #blessed." She knew the hashtag would resonate with her followers, projecting the image of a woman who was both down to earth and aspirational. As the day went on, Morgan's phone didn't stop buzzing. The followers kept rolling in, and she couldn't help but check her notifications every few minutes, watching as her influence grew in real time. It wasn't just about the numbers, it was about the validation, the proof that her efforts were paying off. When she finally joined the others for breakfast, Morgan was glowing with satisfaction. She kept her excitement in check, casually mentioning to Emma how much she appreciated the post. Emma smiled, waving it off as no big deal, but Morgan could tell that the gesture was a sign of their growing friendship and mutual respect. Later that afternoon, as they lounged in the estate's garden, sipping tea and enjoying the mild British weather, Morgan felt a sense of contentment she hadn't experienced in a long time. Everything was falling into place. Her career was on an upward trajectory. Her social media presence was stronger than ever, and she was cultivating relationships that would open doors to even more opportunities. That night, as she lay in bed, Morgan couldn't help but feel a deep sense of satisfaction. The image she had crafted, the persona she had worked so hard to project, was finally being recognized and celebrated. She drifted off to sleep with a smile on her face, already planning her next move. The flight back to Boston was uneventful, but Julia couldn't shake the strange feeling that had settled in the pit of her stomach. As the plane descended into Logan International Airport, she replayed the events of their girls' trip to England in her mind, particularly the odd moment when Morgan had nonchalantly declared herself single in front of Daphne. It wasn't like Morgan to be careless with her words, especially in front of someone as connected as Daphne. Julia had been friends with Morgan for years, and though she knew Morgan could be ambitious to the point of ruthlessness, this felt different, calculated even. Julia's driver picked her up from the airport. As the car made its way through the familiar streets of Boston, she leaned her head against the window, watching the city blur by. Boston was home, a place of comfort and routine, a stark contrast to the glamorous whirlwind of their London trip. By the time she arrived at her Beacon Hill townhouse, the late afternoon sun was casting a golden glow over the historic brick buildings. Her husband Daniel was just finishing cooking lunch, waiting with a bouquet of yellow roses, her favourite. Their son, a bundle of energy, who had just greeted her, had already dashed away to find his favourite toys, while their 2 dogs barked excitedly in greeting. Julia's heart swelled with love as she stepped into the cosy warmth of their home. This was her sanctuary, the place where she could truly be herself, away from the demands of her work and social life. After settling back in, Julia and Daniel sat down in the living room, sipping glasses of wine as the evening began to unfold. The dogs, tired from playing with their son, curled up on the rug by the fireplace, while the soft hum of the city filtered in through the open windows. Julia took a deep breath and turned to Daniel, her brow furrowed with concern. "There's something I've been meaning to talk to you about." Daniel, always perceptive, immediately picked up on her tone. "What's on your mind, Jules?" "It's about Morgan," she began, carefully choosing her words. "You know how close we've been for years, right? We went on this girls' trip to England with Emma and Daphne, Count Sebastian's cousin." Daniel raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "That sounds like quite the trip." "It was," Julia agreed. But something strange happened. During lunch, Daphne asked Morgan if she was seeing anyone, and Morgan said she was single. "The thing is, she's been with Rick for almost 4 years now. They live together, for God's sake. It just felt off." Daniel frowned, his expression thoughtful. "That is odd. Morgan's never been one to hide her relationships, especially not from her close friends." "Did she say why?" "No," Julia said, shaking her head. "She didn't explain herself at all, and I didn't press her on it in front of the others. But later, when we were back at the estate, I asked her about it. She just brushed it off, saying that her personal and public personas needed to be kept separate, and that she and Rick don't have a real future together anyway." Daniel leaned back in his chair, a puzzled look on his face. "That doesn't make much sense. Why stay with someone for 4 years if you don't see a future with them?" "That's exactly what I thought," Julia replied, sighing. "But you know how Morgan is. She's always been driven by ambition, sometimes to the point of being ruthless. I can't help but wonder if she's trying to maneuver herself into the British social scene, maybe even trying to get set up with someone in that circle before breaking things off with Rick." Daniel's eyes widened in realization. "You think she's trying to trade up, so to speak?" Julia bit her lip, conflicted. "It sounds harsh when you put it that way, but yes, that's exactly what I'm thinking. She's always been focused on her image, and after spending time with Daphne and seeing that world up close, maybe she's decided that being with Rick doesn't align with the life she wants." Daniel let out a low whistle. "That's pretty cold if it's true, but then again, this is Morgan we're talking about. She's always been laser-focused on getting ahead." "I know," Julia said softly, feeling a pang of sadness. "But it just feels wrong, Daniel. Rick's a good guy, and he doesn't deserve to be strung along like this." Daniel reached over and took her hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "You've always been the moral compass of your group, Jules. Maybe you're the one who needs to talk to Morgan, really talk to her, and make her see what she's doing." Julia nodded, appreciating his support. "You're right. I don't want to lose her as a friend, but I also don't want to see her hurt Rick, or herself, for that matter. I just hope she's not so far gone down this path that she can't see reason anymore." As they sat together in the quiet of their home, Julia couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in her friendship with Morgan. The carefree days of their early years seemed far behind them now, replaced by the complexities of adulthood, ambition, and the choices that came with it. And as much as she wanted to help Morgan, she couldn't help but wonder if her friend was already too far down a road that would lead to heartache for everyone involved. Morgan was lounging on the plush sofa in her Boston apartment, a glass of wine in hand, when her phone buzzed. It was Emma, calling from New York. They had stayed close since their London getaway, chatting regularly about their lives, fashion, and the circles they were navigating. "Hey, darling." Emma's voice came through, vibrant and full of energy as usual. "Emma, how's the Big Apple treating you?" Morgan replied, settling into the cushions, ready for a long conversation. "Busy as always, but that's just how I like it. Speaking of which, I've been thinking about you." "Oh, do tell." Morgan's curiosity was piqued. "I was at the Haven Society the other night, and it hit me. Morgan, you would be perfect for it. They've got a branch in Boston too. I could put in a recommendation if you're interested." "You think I'd fit in there?" Morgan asked, trying to sound nonchalant, but she couldn't hide the excitement in her voice. Are you kidding? You're exactly the kind of person they want, successful, glamorous, and well-connected. Plus, it's an amazing place to network. No social media, no photos, just real, meaningful connections. Trust me, you'd love it. Morgan's mind raced with the possibilities. Emma, that sounds incredible. I'd love it if you could recommend me. Consider it done, Emma said with a smile in her voice. I'll get the ball rolling. You'll have an invite in no time. True to her word, within a week, Morgan received an invitation to join the Haven Society. She didn't hesitate to accept. The Boston branch was housed in a historic brownstone in Beacon Hill, discreet and luxurious, just as she had imagined. It was the kind of place where she could see herself spending hours, surrounded by the city's elite. Morgan quickly made it her new haunt. She brought her laptop under the guise of working on her blog, but in truth, she was there to network. The no photos policy was a relief. Here, she didn't have to worry about maintaining her social media image. She could be herself, or at least, the version of herself she wanted to present to this exclusive crowd. One afternoon, as she was sipping a cappuccino in the Society's library, her phone rang. It was Leo, the head of membership for the entire Haven Society. They had spoken briefly when she first joined, but this was the first time he had reached out directly. Hi, Morgan, it's Leo, he said, his voice smooth and confident. I wanted to check in and see how you're settling in at the Haven Society. Hi, Leo. I'm loving it here, Morgan replied. She knew how influential Leo was, and she wanted to make a good impression. I'm glad to hear that, Leo said warmly. I've been hearing great things about you from some of our members. I was thinking you should really experience some of our other branches. How does Miami sound? Or maybe New York? Morgan's excitement was barely contained. That sounds incredible. I'd love to. Perfect, Leo said. I'll make sure you're on the guest list for a few events we've got coming up. It'll be a great opportunity for you to meet some of our other members. Over the next few weeks, Leo followed through on his promise. He invited Morgan to high-end events in Miami, where she mingled with celebrities and business moguls, and exclusive dinners in New York, where the conversations were as rich as the food. Each event was another step up the ladder, another opportunity to solidify her place in the world she was, determined to conquer. Through it all, Morgan played her part perfectly charming, poised, and always just a little bit mysterious. She knew she was on the right path, and with Leo's help, the possibilities seemed endless. The Haven Society had become her sanctuary, her stepping stone to the life she had always dreamed of, and as she continued to climb, she couldn't help but feel that she was finally where she was meant to be, at the centre of it all, with the world at her feet. Morgan stood in front of the mirror in their luxurious suite at the Tulum resort, carefully applying the final touches to her makeup. The deep green evening gown she wore clung perfectly to her figure, exuding an elegance that matched the opulent setting. The wedding they were attending was one of the most talked about events in their social circle, and Morgan knew she had to look the part. She adjusted her earrings, pleased with how everything was coming together. Rick, who had been watching her from the doorway, walked over with a smile on his face. Morgan noticed the excitement in his eyes, and her curiosity was piqued. "What's that look for?" she asked playfully, glancing at him through the mirror. "I have something for you," Rick said, his voice warm with affection. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, elegant blue box. Morgan's heart skipped a beat, not out of love, but out of anticipation for what might be inside. She turned to face him, intrigued. "Rick, what's this?" she asked, her tone light and teasing, though internally she was calculating what this gift might mean. He opened the box to reveal a stunning diamond necklace, sparkling under the soft lighting of the room. The diamonds were flawless, set in a delicate gold. It was exquisite, undoubtedly expensive, and something that would catch anyone's eye. "Morgan," Rick began, his voice filled with sincerity, "these past years have been the best of my life. You've brought so much joy and love into my world, and I wanted to give you something to show you how much you mean to me. I love you." Morgan's smile was perfect, but behind it, her thoughts were racing. She knew Rick was deeply in love with her, and the jewellery was proof of that. But as much as she appreciated the gesture and the luxury it represented, she couldn't help but feel the disconnect between them growing wider. She delicately took the necklace from the box and allowed him to fasten it around her neck. The diamonds glittered beautifully against her skin, and she admired it for a moment, knowing it would make a statement at the wedding tonight. "Rick, it's beautiful," she said, her voice soft and affectionate. "Thank you. You're so thoughtful." He smiled, clearly pleased that she liked the gift. "I just wanted you to know how much I love you, Morgan. You're my everything." She leaned in to kiss him, a gentle brush of lips that she knew would satisfy him. "You're amazing," she whispered, knowing how to play her part well. "I love it, and I love you." She had spent years perfecting this role, the loving girlfriend, the one who was always supportive and appreciative. But deep down, she knew this wasn't what she truly wanted. As she looked back at her reflection in the mirror, the necklace catching the light, Morgan couldn't help but feel guilty, just for a second. Rick was a good man, a kind man, and he loved her deeply. But good wasn't enough. Not for the life she envisioned, not for the future she was determined to carve out for herself. She had exhausted her opportunities in the Boston social scene, and though Tulum was beautiful and the wedding was grand, she knew this was just another stop on her way to something greater. The life Rick wanted with her, a settled life, perhaps marriage and a family, wasn't the life she saw for herself. She had bigger plans, bigger dreams, and they didn't involve staying in Boston or being tied down in a relationship that no longer excited her. But tonight she would play her part. She would attend the wedding on Rick's arm, the perfect picture of a loving couple. She would smile, laugh and dance, all while wearing the beautiful jewellery he had given her. But in her heart, Morgan knew that this was just another chapter, one that would eventually come to an end as she moved on to the next phase of her life. As they prepared to leave for the wedding, Morgan pushed these thoughts aside and focused on the evening ahead. There would be time later to figure out how to move forward, how to gracefully exit a relationship that no longer served her. For now, she would enjoy the night, knowing that with every calculated step she took, she was moving closer to the life she truly wanted.